morning, everyone joining in. We're going to be starting in a moment. We're going to kind of let the numbers settle for this part. And we do have the Q&A open just as a heads up. So as you're filing in, don't hesitate to ask any questions as well.
Yes, and we will also be having like a dedicated Q&A session near the end of the event. So you can feel, even if you feel like, okay, you might want to ask, reserve your questions till the end of the session, please feel free. And we'll also be answering questions throughout the session. I think Jordan from Hudu will also be part of the session, answering any questions you might have. So feel free. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes and let the folks give the folks a little bit of time to join, and we'll get started. So.
Yeah, so Manish, how about we do kind of an introduction of ourselves while we're having people hop in, and then when we hit the point running, we can, kind of just get started and start chatting about what we're talking about today.
Oh, perfect. So, all right. So I'll just get my introduction out of the way. So my name is Manish, and I'm part of the product marketing team here at SuperOps and Hudu. So my responsibilities are primarily just taking all of the features that our awesome engineering team builds and giving them a face, giving them all sorts of intuitive tweaks, and making sure that the feature is as usable and as friendly to users as possible. And this is basically just taking them out to market and bringing as many eyeballs onto the features and onto the platform as possible, and basically just ensuring that it's being used well by our customers. So it's just basically taking the feature from end to end on a intuitiveness and user friendliness and efficiency perspective. So and I'll just let Sam and June do the introductions on there. So go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so I'm Sam with Hudu. I'm our Chief Educational Officer. Typically what that means is anything on the educational side, whether it's onboarding, documentation, or events like this. You hear my voice quite a lot, and I apologize to all of our returning clients to these things. But yeah, so I deal with a lot of kind of the client interaction, a lot of making sure that we're communicating with the community, and on top of that, building that educational content. Now, we are also fortunate to have Jordan with us. Jordan's typically my right hand on these webinars, handling all those questions that I need help with while I'm chatting. So Jordan, if you want to quick say something for a second, don't worry about turning on your camera if you don't want to. I know it's an early morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, please answer any questions in the Q&A. I'd be happy to answer those as Sam and Manish are going through their demos and talking about the webinar today.
And feel free to give him a challenge. We always like to see what questions we can or can't answer live. It's always a good test.
Amazing, nice. So, all right. So I'll just probably walk you folks through the agenda of the session, so that while folks keep joining in, we'll also be able to give you folks a rundown of what we have planned for the session. It's probably going to be on the shorter side. We'll probably have like around 30 to 45 minutes to take you through what we have planned. So it is going to be like we're going to talk about how having your IT documentation close to your everyday operations basically makes a lot more sense, and a lot more efficiency comes into play when you have those things close together. So we're going to talk about the first step of process, which is basically how your operations can reach their best possible state, how you can make them efficient. And basically, we're going to be talking about the goodness of documentation and how they step in at various different places. And then we're just going to be talking about the integration in itself, and we're going to be having a high-level overview of how the whole configuration process happens, and we're just going to be talking about how data moves from SuperOps onto Hudu. And then Sam is going to be walking us through the journey of how you can basically build that network of well-documented, well-connected repository of information that you can always access at any point of time. So that's basically the agenda for the session. So Sam, just let me know when you want to go, when we can get started. We can just get moving.
Yeah, how about we get started, and I'll keep an eye on chat, kind of answering questions throughout with Jordan over here, and we'll just continue from this point on. How's that sound?
All right, perfect. So maybe do you want to just give attendees another minute to just join in? And
yeah. No, absolutely. And the other thing I do want to point out, as we do have people coming in, this is an awesome and more unique integration that does come into Hudu. So we are going to talk more about that as it comes in. But typically we have a synced card that isn't quite as malleable or entry on the side. So it's really cool to see how this interacts differently with Hudu. I'm really excited to show that off as well. It does come in a way that this is actually the first of its kind to really edit the fields directly. And I'm excited to talk about how that really influences those types of items, how we can build that documentation as well. And of course, it's been a pleasure working with you and your team, Manish, and it's been wonderful getting this all put together.
Likewise, I mean, it's been a joy to work with you folks so far. So, all right, so maybe we'll just give it like another few seconds, and we just I'm just super excited to get started with this. All right, folks.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and again, yeah, we do have Q&A open. I'll probably say that a couple too many times. I apologize in advance, but it's always good to make sure that there's absolutely time to interact with us. If you're curious about something, you want to know anything else, like I did mention before, we do have a moderator. So we're always happy to chat, make sure that you're getting your questions answered, and we are more than happy to be transparent. We like engaging with you all and having that conversation. So never hesitate to throw something into chat. We're always happy to engage.
Yes, and that applies for the SuperOps side of things as well. I do have a decent understanding of the product, so if you folks have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to ask me. And even if I don't have answers to something, I'd be more than happy to just follow up with you, get those answers from our product team, and just pass it on to you. So please feel free to use the Q&A section to you as much as you want. And also, and even if you do have to drop out at any point of time, no worries. We do have we are recording this session, so we will be passing on a copy of the session to you after the session's over. So you can look forward to that in your inbox. So, all right. So I think all right. I think we can just get started now. So, I think I'm just going to start off with a demo of SuperOps. And for newcomers who are joining the product, I just wanted to like walk you folks through just what SuperOps is, and maybe take you folks from where you are, where the MSP landscape is, and how we wanted to create a few changes so that your operations are the better fit at the end of the day. So, so for the newcomers and everybody else, hi, I am from SuperOps.ai. It's a PSA RMM platform that's basically meant to make the lives of MSPs and IT service people who are having a really difficult time with a lot of their operations on an everyday basis, right? Because there are a lot of tools in the MSP landscape that are currently operating on a legacy basis, where there are a lot of tools that are on-premise and all of that. So we just kind of wanted to break away from that whole structure of dealing with outdated, clunky tools of software, pieces of software, and basically giving the MSP industry in itself the same level of software innovation that basically every other piece of every other industry has seen, right? So what we wanted to do is basically we realized that there was a lot of good benefit that came from unifying the PSA and RMM bits of operation in itself. Because one thing that we realized is, and that's something that's also core to this session, is that the core of having your operations as efficient as possible is also one of the main reasons that we chose to integrate both our PSA and RMM platforms in the first place, because there was just so much valuable context that complemented a lot of the operations that you did on either of these individual tools. So what we wanted to do is, like, say from minute one, for example, if you're logging into SuperOps, you'll be able to see the context that comes in from different sources, different parts of your operational tech stack. So for example, if it's your tickets, if it's your patches, if it's your assets, your mentions, all of those things are just so basically this is like a flexible canvas of sorts, where you're able to see all of the different parts of your platform just neatly arranged together based on your own customizable level of whatever works for your productivity. You can basically just configure it here, and you can align it so that you are basically equipped to show the most productive version of yourself, right? So what happens is, for example, if you're taking a ticket, you can just jump into my open tickets for the day right from your home screen. So you're able to just prioritize your work and just jump into things that matter to you most right from minute one. So what you're doing is you have two versions here, where you're able to see a list of the tickets that you're responsible for the day. And even in a list like this, you have a lot of context where you're seeing a lot of different colors that tell you what the priorities are and all of that. But then again, we also wanted to take it like one step forward, and we wanted to make that decision-making process a little more visual and a little more intuitive. So what we decided is the campaign view, where the time you take for making decisions and prioritizing your work gets cut in half, right? So here you can also just directly see that you have one critical ticket that really needs your attention. So you're basically just going to jump in if you're a technician, start working on it right away. So this also adds in a lot of value to your ticket dispatchers and your admins who are just moving tickets around and making sure that there's nothing unassigned and that everything has a set of eyes looking at it, right? So it's also really valuable for technicians who want to make sure that things are moving, even if there's like a technician who isn't available on the day, you just move around ticket technician so that nobody's overloaded and things are just moving smooth, right? So let's just take like a ticket, for example, and you're able to see like all of the updates that are happening within the ticket. You're able to see even like the smaller details like side conversations and email notifications on all that left. And you have like a very communicative, a very chat-like interface where you're just feeling like it isn't like a long winding email thread that's going on, even if it's basically cutting out a lot of the fatigue that comes in with email conversations, especially if you're a technician who's been doing this for years and you have a lot of tickets to respond on a daily basis. So it does bring in a lot of that modern aspect to ticketing and all of that. And then you have a lot of context to it, right, where you're seeing different sets of properties with different levels of context to give you that information and making sure that you have all of the information at your disposal to start making decisions, whether it's the priority of the ticket, whether it falls under specific categories or subcategories. You have a lot of information that really enables you to work on this ticket a little better, right? And I also wanted to touch upon something that's very unique to SuperOps in itself, which is called a runbook. It's basically like a standard operating procedure of sorts that's tied in very closely to ticketing, where it's going to tell you exactly for a specific issue that you might have, you might be getting tickets for very frequently. The runbook really makes that process of dealing it from end to end a lot simpler. For example, this is a laptop crash issue, and the laptop crash runbook is assigned to it. So what it does is it basically covers all of the aspects that you need to work on the ticket, from basically all of the messages that you need to send, all the tasks that need to be completed for this specific issue, and who you need to get approval from, right? So for example, if I do have to send a reply to the issue regarding this issue, all I have to do is click on the laptop crash first response, and the canned response takes care of the communication part of it automatically, right? So all I have to do is hit send, and the communication part is taken care of. So, and then from there on, all I have to do is move to the tasks module and hit associate, and I'll be able to see a list of all of the tasks that I need to do for this particular set of for this particular issue, right? So all I'm just going to do is click on the tasks that I need to do for this particular problem, and just get cracking on it. All I have to do is just start working on the ones that I have associated here, and then half the issue is done, right? And then there's also the approval process that I can configure, where whether if it's a client or an admin that I need to get approval from, all of those are triggered automatically. And there's also the concept of side conversations in SuperOps, where you can handle all of your external conversations that you have with vendors, your on-site technicians, and everybody else who is outside your organization, but you still have a very solid working relationship with. And all of this is context that usually leaves your ticketing and your operational platform, right? Because you handle it either through your phone, through chat, through your email threads on your personal inbox. All of those things we have them consolidated so that you have a single ticket that becomes your single source of truth in situations like these, where your external conversations with the customer are captured here, your internal conversations where you're collaborating with your users are captured in your notes tab, and all of your external conversations with vendors and whatever you're procuring for your customers are all handled here in your site conversations tab. So that is basically how your operations are really pushed to their edge when it comes to like handling conversations and delivering exceptional levels of service. But how does this all tie into when you're troubleshooting for this very example, when you're troubleshooting for an asset? How does the unified angle really come into play? So that's where if you look at the bottom right of the screen, you'd be able to see that there's already an asset associated with this ticket, right? So in that sort of situation, instead of me having to just log out of this, switch tabs and go into my RMM and go into a specific client, find which asset they have and all of that, I really want, instead of going through all of those individual hoops, all I have to do is just go to the bottom right, and I'm directly into the asset. So I have the amount of flexibility and the amount of speed I'm able to do this with is really has been really valuable for technicians. So so what here you have a lot of information with regards to the basic health of the asset and all of that. So if you're troubleshooting and if you really wanted like immediate insights on say some of the high level metrics that you care about, all of that information is readily available for you within the summary tab. So it's for like most frequent issues, all you have to do is just look at the memory of the system, whether the CPU usage is under normal levels and all of that, and then you can just basically drill down into like more granular details with the memory and disk volume and all of that information. And then you can also switch to the tickets tab where you have the unified value stepping in once more, where you're able to see a history of all of the tickets that were raised for the system. So you're able to have that context of what this specific asset has been through, right? So for example, if the laptop crash issue is a new one, maybe your decisions might be different. But if you're able to go through the history of tickets that this asset has raised, and you're seeing that it's a recurring pattern, then that might influence you to make another decision. May say, okay, this is probably time that this asset is replaced. So you're able to make more meaningful decisions by the context that's really gathered and consolidated into one page. That really makes all of the action that you take and all of the decisions that you take a lot easier, right? So because now you're able to reach the core of diagnosing the issue, and what happens is just taking action, right? Here you also have all of the actionable tools that you need to fix the issue through the terminal, where you can basically run your command prompt and run your PowerShell and basically get to the core of the issue. Or you can just run scripts on the asset to just if you're able to understand that it's okay, it's not really something that really needs my manual intervention, you could just run a script and get things done. And you can also always have a remote access session run right from within your asset, because you can integrate with Splashtop, with TeamViewer, and ConnectWise Control. So running a remote session is also really easy. So that really makes sure that the part of reactive troubleshooting gets covered with real and simplicity, right? So that's basically where the reactive troubleshooting comes into place. And so we do also want to take it one step further, where you're just not reactively troubleshooting a lot of things all the time, right? You want to anticipate issues, you want to fix some things before they're even identified by the customer. You don't want tickets coming in, basically. You want to reduce the number of issues that happen, and you want to really show that value, right? So that's why we also want to give them that flexibility through creating policies where you're able to proactively monitor for specific issues, and you're able to address those issues through automatic remediation. So for example, if I am going through the policies that I want to set for, like, say, Windows servers, I can basically set different conditions and different rules for each of these conditions. Say, for example, if it's going to be for alerts, for patches, software management, data backup, all of those things, I can have different sets of rules that will apply to, say, that will either apply globally on a client level or a site level. So I can basically customize all of that information right here. And you can also enable our AI-based intelligent alerting, which will basically collect information about your asset. And then it will slowly start understanding it on a deeper level as time goes by, and it will start giving you alerts that general workflow-based alert rules can't really catch. So you also have those benefits right there. So in all of these places, you can see that whether it's the assets that you manage that you're talking about and all of that, all of that valuable information really needs to get pushed to your documentation tool over time, because you do realize that when there's a lot of information and there's a lot of assets that you manage over time, you do end up reinventing the wheel a whole lot, because you do want to know what really solves an issue first. What are some passwords that I said that my user keeps forgetting? So all of the information that your PSA is gathering over time, it's really nice to have a documentation tool that's connected to your PSA RMM that becomes a daily driver for you to always have access to at all times, and make sure that really it really enables you with a lot of that information that you don't have to go searching for every single time. So so I just wanted to, like, talk about what the integration adds with regards to that aspect, because we do have a really good connection with Hudu in that regard. So I'm just going to talk about the connection process for like a minute or two, where you have your account URL and your API tokens for your Hudo account that you can pull from your admin section. And then once you're done, all you have to do is to basically just map the clients that you want to move, that you want to connect with Hudo, and the asset classes basically that talk about all of the assets that you manage in SuperOps.ai, right? So with clients, insights, and requesters, all you have to do is import clients, and you'll see a list of all of the clients that you manage over here. And if you switch over here, you'll be able to see a list of the asset layouts that you've selected for your sites, requesters, and your asset classes, right? You can map all of your individual fields so that information goes and falls into the right place within Hudo. And then you can also map asset classes to make sure that all of the asset information that you're currently monitoring and managing within SuperOps also finds the right place when you're documenting it in Hudo, right? So basically, this is how this is the information that gets pushed to Hudo. So I can also show you what all of this information can look like for you in Hudo as well. So basically, when I switch to my Hudo account, I'll be able to see a list of all of the clients that I've mapped within the company section, where I have two clients mapped here so far, which is basically my PS Inspector Lit account and my Winterfell account. So when I go into PS Inspector Lit, I'll be able to see a dashboard of all of my recent activity feed, statistics, and my most visited assets, right? So here I'll be able to see all of the active assets under my monitoring, which is basically a compilation or a sum of devices, requesters, and assets that have been exported to Hudo. So here I'll be able to navigate between these three sections using the navigation bar on the left. And if I just jump into devices, I'll be able to see a list of assets that have been mapped to Hudo, and I can just open up any asset I want, and I have that information pushed here to Hudo. And it is also anytime that there's a change to any of this information on SuperOps Ascent, anytime there's a change in how these assets are functioning on a daily basis, all of that information gets pushed to Hudo right away. So what happens is, from here on, you're able to build your network of information, your network of documented processes, passwords, photos, everything else gets mapped and gets documented and gets linked over here. So I think I'll pass it over to Sam from here on, where I think he's probably the best person to talk about how you can basically go about this process. So Sam, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. So I'm going to take over in a second, but basically, sorry, excuse me. When we talk about documentation, we talk about bringing things in together and building those relationships and networks. It's something that's incredibly important to do right, and also to have that scalability. And so that's what Hudo is able to provide. And now, Manish, if you don't mind, I'm going to take over on the screen so that way I can share on my instance. And I'm really going to talk about those tool sets, what Hudo can really do with that. But the additional part that I do want to mention as well, and we'll cover this as I have my screen up, which I have to do right now. Which I do need quick permissions for, sorry. But basically what I'm going to be talking about is that scalability on top of it as well. You're going to be managing tons of documentation, unique items, notes that you need to manage, and parts like that. And it's important to make sure that you can build it around your structure, how you want your documentation. Now, I'm going to pick up right where Manish left off and talk about those specific items coming in directly. And part of that is going to be the items where we have those relationships. So we started with that desktop where we have that first inspector, but let's take a look at what that's actually like to directly utilize. Sorry, let me increase my screen size a little bit so you can see it better. So we talk about that network of connectivity, building those relationships and connecting items together. When we have Harvey, for example, what is their main desktop? What articles are they looking at? And what websites are most relative to what we're dealing with typically with that individual? And we have passwords and credentials as well. We want to be able to have that single interface to manipulate, understand the data, and have full control of that structure. And the great thing about the SuperOps integration is that it does pull in directly into these fields. So if there's something maybe specifically not coming in, maybe we want to add additional notes, we are able to edit this, expand on our documentation, and talk more about it. Now, the great thing about the tools within Hudo is you really can customize them. Now, in this case, we have fields coming in from SuperOps, but maybe we want to take that a bit further. And that's where we have the flexibility of these asset layouts, for example. So I'm going to go into this existing one with devices. And we can talk about what is our scope and what do we currently have and what do we need. When we talk about documentation, it's not just write it down so that way we have it. It's what are the critical details? What do we often are looking for? And where is the missing bits of info? When you're solving solutions or going through tickets, you're often going to encounter that you're finding and solving similar issues that other technicians have probably always solved. So let's record that. Let's expand on it and let's make it easier for your teams to use. Part of that is going to be items like, in this case, we have a rich text. This is going to be your text field where you're saying, hey, for this desktop, we're often encountering an issue. This is what we typically encounter. This is typically the solution. And that's such a little detail, but at the same time, it improves so much to it. We can create these fields and expand onto them. Ooh, I should probably name them first, but we can create and expand onto them, making sure that we know the context coming into this. We get to develop it and customize it. And that's where Hudu really shines. Now, I was very fortunate enough to take a look at SuperOps instance and working directly with their integration. So I'm going to stay there for a little bit, but I do also want to highlight what it looks like when you have that in operation with the other documents coming in. So I will backtrack though over to my companies and back into spec. So that way we can really explore exactly what this integration is being able to pull in. So we have those devices, the requesters, the individuals, and we're able to link those all together. And now it's time to talk about, well, why? Well, and the why is that we need context. We need to have that connection together, and we need to have that in a single location. Hudu has a ton of tools to expand on. Our articles, for example, have ways of not only can we create a public share link, we're able to send this to a client who might benefit from this documentation. Maybe Harvey needs this article sent to him every once in a while, and that's totally okay. You can share that for free with them. And you can even write a note saying, hey, Harvey often needs this article. And we get those little notes that make your workflow a lot better. We can also navigate through KPs. So that way, if you're running through a ton of articles, you're able to do that easily. And we have a full editor to allow you to expand on it. Are there certain scripts that require additional tutorials and how-tos that we need to expand on? Do we want to look at the source code? Do we want to edit the page itself? We want to make sure that Hudu is a documentation platform, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a strict tool set. This is based on our interactions with MSPs. This is from Hudu originating from an MSP as well. We're trying to expand on this and give you that freedom. Now, I'm going to quick switch over to our demo instance real quick, just to highlight a couple items, kind of show off what it's like when you have everything kind of filled out within it, because we have a ton of customization options. And while this is only a switch from light to dark mode, because of course, I'm not going to overdo it too much on these demo instances, it is important to talk about where it really all comes together. When you're managing a ton of tickets, you're working through documentation. What are the items that you're often using? What are the tasks or processes you have to get it back into? And what items are expiring soon? We want to give quick highlights of information that's important. You're managing documentations. You need to know when your warranties are about to expire, which applications have a license expiration coming up soon, and who's the champion of that application. We want to make sure that we have that all together. And with Hudu, we can make sure to expand on those notes. I have the other items that we're trying to track. We have, in this case, specific notes, business impact. Why are we tracking this in the first place? And we can expand on that. We can customize it and make sure that when we're building out documentation, when we're filling out these items, we have the important information here. And then we talked about structure for that moment. So I do want to quickly highlight structure in that point, because that's where Hudu does a fantastic job of organizing your documentation. Your technicians are going to spend a lot of time solving solutions, and we want a quick way to make sure that we can retain that knowledge that they do have. So that's where those layouts come in handy. These items right here where I hit edit, we have these defined fields of what we're looking for. What are the notes? What are we trying to identify when we're building out this documentation? It's not that we don't trust them. It's not that we're worried that they might do something wrong. It's more so that we know exactly what we're looking for. We're trying to connect that documentation. And rather than them having to wonder, what do I need to record? Is this important enough? How do they want this organized? We have you on that. That's what Hudu comes in to make sure that we structure it for you. And so we have importance. We have it in a drop-down field to make sure that when you see this, you kind of know the expectation for it. When we talk about the business impact, we can also highlight, how much are we using this application? How much are we managing it as well? And there's a ton of variation in between. In our application list, for example, we have OBS in this case, a little bit different than a management, but what we did have is a license that was really important. Now, in this case, I wouldn't say OBS quite has a license. They are free to use software, but what we are trying to mention is that we can track these items and we can have them centralized and in one area. And we talk about scalability, we can expand on it. It's a structured documentation form that as you move on, as you have more, you have those relationships. We want to make sure that it's easy to identify, highlight. How are we sorting it? What items do we need to see? Do we need to search something? And are we just looking for the content? We can find IP addresses. We can find your MAC address. We can find those items contained in your documentation at the top of your bar. So when you are solving those critical tickets, the items that are really important, managing your documentation, Hudu's trying to make it easy for you. Your operation managers and your team, they don't need to be keeping an eye on everything and micromanaging. And Hudu's meant to replace that, making sure that you have autonomy with your team, you have great documentation structure, and you can scale that up, building those relationships, the context that matters. Now, I am more than happy to talk about specific features if anyone's curious about other items there, but I did want to kind of highlight exactly how it comes in and how it works as a documentation tool. I can also quickly highlight that we do have tons of sharing options as well. Clients want access to their data. They want to see it. It's their data. So let's give them ways to view it. And that's why we have password sharing for free, KB articles for free. And we also have a external portal. Give them access to it in one area. Make sure that they can get access to those articles easily. Websites, assets, it's their PSA info, it's their accounts and their desktops. We want to make sure that it's easy to get to, and it's totally for free. It's a read-only version. You don't have to worry about changes being made, but it helps with that, visibility, the trust that comes around with that transparency that is incredibly important for that client relationship. Now, that does kind of wrap up my initial kind of quick overview of Hudu, tool sets, and items like that. If you are curious to see more, we have tons of videos, tons of explanations and documentation, but I didn't want to take up too much time and allow people to have the availability to ask any more questions or just to kind of have a, quick chat with Manish and I as we talk about, documentation and next steps.
Amazing. Thanks for the really detailed presentation on what Hudu does and what Hudu can do for a lot of people with respect to documentation. So, all right, folks, we are kind of near the end of the session. So if you folks have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can ask them using the Q&A tab. And also, I do have like a quick poll for you folks where I just wanted to understand for newcomers who are new to SuperOps, I just wanted to understand if you liked what you saw. Just let us know if you'd like to know more about the platform, or if you would like for us to get in touch, just let us know and we will reach out to you folks. And same applies for the Hudu folks as well. If you really liked Hudu, you could please get in touch with both Jordan and Sam from the Hudu team, and they'd be more than happy to take you through more in-depth discussions with the platform. So please let me know, guys.
Oh yeah, and so Manish, what is the best way for people to get in contact with SuperOps? Do you have a specific avenue that you recommend for them? We typically say our support team, the best way of getting in contact with us, you don't have to be a client. You don't have to be actively trialing. If you have questions, reach out to our support. It goes directly to the people who can help you answer those questions.
Agreed. So I think agreed. That is pretty much the same thing on our end as well. So our support team is super responsive. You don't have to be a client. We do offer 24/5 free support. So our support team is super responsive. Just let them know if you have any questions, and they'd be more than happy to help you out. All right. So just let us know if you. We'll just give it like another minute to see if we have any more questions coming in, or and if not, we'll just wrap up the session from here.
No worries at all. I'll switch back over to the other instance so that way we can at least end on your side. But no, yeah. And as I mentioned before, it's been a pleasure working with SuperOps, and I'm glad that we were able to put this together. It seems like a great integration, and documentation is something that's incredibly important. When you have a very flexible ticketing system, it's also great to make sure that they work together well and that you have those critical items. So it's been a pleasure talking with you and your team, Manish.
All right, likewise, Sam. It's been a great session so far, and I'm really glad for all of the folks. Thank you so much for joining us on the session. So if you folks don't have any more questions, I think we're pretty much ready to wrap the session. So All right. Thank you, folks, for joining in, and we'll see you with the next one. Thank
Everyone
you so
have a
much for
wonderful
joining.
rest of your day.
Thank you so much for joining, Sam and Jordan. It's been a great,
Yeah,
it's been a great
absolutely.
day. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.